continuation for white is to play the move a2, a4, putting instant pressure against this pawn on b5. And what white is trying to do is force black to make a decision. Black usually does not want to capture that pawn on a4 after queen takes a4 check. These split pawns, black can get a disadvantage, an unpleasant disadvantage very early. So black would have to play the move b5, b4. But in this case, what white is hoping to do is benefit from the use of the c4 square to play a move like knight d2, knight d7, knight c4, with a comfortable advantage actually for VAR. So he will be, our tournament leader will be very pleased if he could achieve a position like this. Because again, if he can put a point on the board today, don't forget, he drew 4, he's won 3 in a row. If he could keep that streak alive, this championship may be over.
Right, and keep that symmetry alive. But he does have to play Gata, so Gata will always have some destiny in his own hands, as we like to say.
True.
Now, those perceptive guys among you might have noticed that we're not being hosted by live stream today, but rather Ustream. But otherwise, everything is working the same. And your questions and comments should be #USChessChamps on Twitter, or you can email us at comments@stlouischessclub.org. And adults with great questions will receive a free diamond membership to chess.com. And we're also giving out gold memberships for chesskid.com for juniors with great questions. And some of those juniors are coming to our kids classes here at the St. Louis Chess Club. So keep the questions coming. And
on the first board in the ladies section,
yes, Zatonsky-Melikina.
Even Melikina sacrificed a pawn in the French defense. She did it earlier in the tournament against Sabine Feuser, I recall. And so Anna has taken up the gauntlet. Let's go through the opening, e4, e6. This is the French defense by black. Again, very similar to the Caro-Kann. As black puts a pawn on d5, puts pressure against the white's center structure. The advance, French defense. And all of these moves have been played earlier in the tournament between, oh, I should just mention a quick tactic here. This pawn on d4 is not under threat of capture right away. There is the elementary tactic that after a trade on d4, notice that in this moment the queen on d4 is not protected. So when this bishop moves away with a discovered check, a disco, black loses her queen. So of course our tournament leader was aware of that. That's why she plays the move bishop d7, saying to white, my plan is to take your pawn. And white says, be my guest.
Well, that's the thing about putting the bishop on d3 in this line. Obviously, well, not obviously, but one of the things that a French player dreams of doing is getting their bishop to d3 with this pawn on e5, and then, you know, meeting a kingside castle, and we kind of have a ready-made attack, right? Because we just have our beautiful bishop on d3, and you can't bring your pieces to the defense that easily.
Exactly.
But the reason why the French is still played is that, unfortunately, it's actually not so easy to put your bishop on d3 because this pressure against d4 is too immense. We can't easily meet it with a bishop e3 because our b2 pawn is hanging.
Right.
And if we, for instance, try to just move our bishop back to c2, then things like knight b4 can shut down that bishop, and we don't want that.
Right. So what you're saying is white wants to be able to maintain the pawn on d4 while also putting his bishop on this wonderfully attractive diagonal. If you try to defend the pawn on d4 with bishop dropping back, then we see that black gets great activity with her bishop and prevents white from castling. And by the way, there's also another problem in the position knight b4 check.
That's
knight
right,
d3 check.
knight d3 check, yeah. So the funny thing about this, though, is if you think about it, and white was able to play this opening and hold on to the d-pawn and keep the bishop on d3, nobody would play the French.
Exactly.
It would be, they'd all switch to the Caro-Kann.
Exactly.
So the only way you can get your bishop on d3 is if you're willing to go in for one of these sacrificial lines, which is indeed what Alyssa did. And we've got Maurice Ashley for more on Adisa Vanjoko's recent play. In fact, her thrilling contest against Irina Krush.
Indeed, Jen, her game from 2 days ago was just simply epic. I mean, she has to be thanking her lucky stars, her lucky horseshoe, her rabbit's foot, whatever it was that made her survive this game, because she was dead busted in this position, but she changed the whole tenor of this event. Take a look at this position here. So it's chaotic, it's wild. There's nothing about it that looks normal. Black's king is sitting on f6, there's no pawns protecting it. All its pieces are ahead. White's king by its lonesome except for one rook. This passed d pawn. But all that said, White's simply winning. If she had found this move, queen takes on c5, which she did not play because she was afraid of this move, knight takes on f3, noticing the line that on bishop takes on f3, queen g3 check, that if she moved here, then this is a perpetual check coming. So that means that she would have to go to h1, but suddenly rook takes on h3 check would have also led to a perpetual after pawn takes and queen takes f3, and this queen can dance around making sure that the white king does not escape. So in this position, after queen takes c5, knight takes f3 check, Irina had to find the really cool and cold-blooded move, king to h1, leaving everything on the board and actually losing a whole rook. But the fact is that that black king is the problem here. White is going to be all over black any second now. And if black tries to, for example, retreat the knight in this position, then black faces a blistering attack after check. The king can't go anywhere. If it goes up the board, then of course, queen e6 would be mate. So she'd have to go backwards. And of course, this is going to lead to serious pain after rook c7 check and the white pieces flood the position. As it stood, the game went the other route. Irina missed another chance to keep the game going, and Alyssa came back and managed to almost even win the game. In fact, so Irina was disgusted with her play. Her face was shaking, and you could tell that she was really angry yesterday, 2 days ago. Now she's got to get her equanimity back and just play chess. She said to me after the game, now I'm trailing. I've got to catch up. So her attitude has got to be despondent, but she's a champion. She's been a champion 5 times now, so she's got to get her head back in the game to try to win and put pressure on her main rival as they face off tomorrow in a big matchup. Guys?
Well, thank you, Maurice. Again, we'll keep a close eye, of course, on the Sabine Feuser Irina Krush game, but also I'm looking at the tournament leader, Anna Zatonsky versus Melikina French Gambit game. So what White has done is sacrificed her d4 pawn with the idea that after bringing her knight to f3, Black is going to have a hard time finding a good home for her king. So what I mean by that is, let's just put some moves on the board for a second. Let's say knight e7. Now, the question is, should I take that pawn or not? I'm just considering a line where I take this pawn and take this bishop. I'm not super excited about.
Pawn rubber, you.
Yeah, I know. I'm not super excited about that. So if I play a move like, say, bishop f4, just developing my pieces, one of the standard attacking lines of play is what we call the bishop sacrifice. After black has castled kingside, without a knight on the f6 square, there is the standard sacrifice of bishop takes h7 check, king takes h7, knight g5 check. And everybody in their career at one time or another has fallen for this type of bishop sacrifice that usually ends in a checkmating attack for white.
That's right. Even if the knight weren't on e7, what you see a lot of the time is the pattern queen f7 check, king h8, and then you circle back around and
take the g7 pawn.
The king is on e7 and queen takes g7 is often made.
Right.
With the piece on d8. Sorry, guys, but you got to know those patterns.
You got to know those patterns.
I mean, you know, it's really important. Of course, those of you viewing might point out that knight takes d4 would also win a piece because queen d4, and now that bishop h7 check, which bishop d7 was designed to protect against any kind of light squared bishop, would still be in the air.
Exactly. And again, the typical discovery against an unprotected queen on the d4 square. Oops. So Anna cannot go in for a line like this. So what white is trying to do is play for a position where after, for example, a move like, let's say, oh, what were we doing? I beg your pardon. A position like this, where it makes it very uncomfortable for black as to where black is going to put her king. She doesn't really want to castle queenside because of the open c-file. And again, castling kingside means you can't allow this bishop takes h7 types of sacrifice. No doubt that Anna did a great deal of preparation, and having studied her opponent's game, realized that Adisa likes this kind of gambit play for white, so that she, Anna, should be well prepared on the defensive side. She's got a pawn in her pocket. If she can hang on to the pawn, she'll end up with an advantage late in the game.
That's right, and what Yasser is saying is that because Adisa has played this opening many times before, Anna could have prepared for this quite intensely, especially with that entire day off. And we've got Maurice Ashley with some thoughts on the Melikina-Zatonsky sacrifice.
Actually, Jen, Melikina played this line against Sabina Feuser in round 2. They got to this exact opening, and Anna prepared an innovation against her. Let's show the novelty in this moment. After knight b to d2, this exact position appeared in round 2 against Feuser. And Feuser in this position, if you remember, played the move knight to f5. I will take that off so I can show you the move. Knight to f5 was how that game went. If you remember, knight b3 and the move knight h6, that kind of crazy play. And Adisa ended up losing a wild game that she was, in fact, winning, cold cut winning, and allowed Feuser to come back and defeat her in that contest. So she might have negative memories about that game as she's playing this one. Or maybe she's decided, you know, I had a good game. I'm going to keep playing my line, my bread and butter. I saw Anna in the elevator at the Chase Hotel where we're all staying, and I was going up and I saw her and I said, how do you feel today? This was just before the round. And she said, good. And I said, really? And she said, and then I just chatting with her, the 2 key words she said after good was rested and prepared. I didn't ask her about being prepared, but clearly she was ready for this exact line against Adisa today, and she's walked right into it. Remember, her husband, Grandmaster Daniel Friedman, is a grandmaster who's been helping her throughout the contest, so no doubt he looked at this opening as well and said, baby, you're going to be okay. Play like this. Back to you guys.
Nothing like a voice of a reassurance from a chess grandmaster.
Well, Anna has a couple of GM norms of her own, so I think she's pretty close to being a grandmaster herself. She just doesn't play in that many grandmaster tournaments. I think.
Well, it's a question of not giving herself more
volume.
Opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And she stated quite clearly before the tournament that she hasn't played enough chess, and she chided herself for not, playing a few more tournaments. But if she were to concentrate herself and just say, okay, I'm going to make my grandmaster title, I'm sure she would achieve it. She's a very, very strong player.
And then we would have 2 grandmasters in the women's championship and some possibility, I think, then for norms.
How interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So,
yeah.
Anna Zatonsky.
And in the other game between Irina Krush and Sabine Feuser, they've played just a quiet Queen's Indian opening.
That's right. And
nothing
Irina
special
Krush,
happening at this moment in time.
Although Irina Krush has had so much success on the white side of this type of position, it's kind of
funny to see her
on the black side. I mean,
on the black side. That's right.
With white, she's played these types of things her whole life. With black, She's done a lot of experimenting, and in fact, she was playing the Queen's Gambit accepted for many years.
Exactly. That's right. So in this opening, black doesn't usually try to occupy the center with pawns, keeping a restrained pawn structure on d6 and e6, but rather to control the center with piece play. Specifically, this long-range bishop on b7, this knight on f6, controlling the e4 square as well, holds white back from occupying and achieving a large center White usually just plays the move a2, a3, takes the two bishops. Notice this rather unpleasant pin. Black often breaks that pin by playing the pawn weakening move g7, g5, puts her knight in the center, and lots of games have been played from this position. I have a great deal of experience also on the white side. I have a small preference for arenas, for White's position.
Again, hard to not say Irina's position.
White's position, but still very early in this game.
That's right, and we do have some questions coming in to our hashtag US Chess Champs. In fact, one player had a very good question about how we prevent cheating. Are there measures to prevent cheating in the US Chess Championship? Specifically, they asked, what precautions are taking to rule out cheating in the US Chess Champs, and what are things that TDs can do to stop cheating? Well, one of the great things about the St. Louis Chess Club, besides it being beautiful, is that the playing area is an independent area where everything the chess players need is on that floor. So nobody needs to leave the chess club, and that means that they can check all of their electronic, they're not, can they? They're required to check all of their electronic devices.
They are scanned as they go into the into the hall. Yes.
And and then everything they need, the bathrooms, the food, even a smoking area. If I don't know if we have any players who smoke this year, but if there are players who smoke, there's even a little bit of an outdoor area that they can go to.
Right.
So there's no reason for anybody to leave that floor, and in fact, they're not allowed to until the game is over. And therefore, the cheating. I mean, obviously the biggest concern would be that somebody would have access to an electronic device.
Right.
So in this tournament, you can't cheat. Unfortunately, for other bigger open tournaments, it's not as easy to create that kind of independent bubble type atmosphere.
Exactly.
So here we are very serious about it, and even though the players here, you know, we don't believe any of them would ever cheat.
Outstanding, honorable gentlemen and ladies. Yes.
It's great to have set that precedent. That
of course.
This is the standard, and this is what other people and organizers around the country and the world should be following. I mean, don't forget that Garry Kasparov called the St. Louis Chess Club the best chess club in the world.
Right.
So people are looking at us and saying, what are you guys doing? And we want to make sure that the scourge of cheating is just completely eliminated.
Absolutely, that it doesn't even enter the discussion. Further to everything you've said, I would also add, as you can see from your screens right now, there's webcams all over the place. We have webcams of people walking back and forth. I mean, it's impossible. It's simply impossible to get any electronic information or device into the playing hall. I do have our game between our leader, Var Akobian, up on the board against Sergei Ehrenberg. That has been that Queen's Gambit accepted. Var did play that move A2, A4 as I thought he would. We'll just go back to this moment. A4 was played, B4. Var played the move Queen E2, which is okay. It's not my first choice. The idea behind Queen E2 is to get in E3, E4, and E4, E5 ASAP, and also in case of C7, C5 by Black, White likes to shift his rook to D1 quickly. I always thought it was more important to put the knight on C4. Oops, my arrows aren't so great. To put that knight on C4 as soon as possible. But Queen E2 was played, and I believe we've had C5. So a battle of ideas, and still early in the opening going on in this game.
And I think that we have some interesting develops in Naraditzki's game against Gamsky.
Ah, okay, so let's see what had happened. We'll go back a few moves. So after knight D7, Daniel just developed his knight, knight F3, cool, calm, knight F6, takes, C2, C3. So this was actually a game I played against Ben Finegold in the US Championships a few years ago as Black. Bishop G4 and H2, H3. Now Gata played a kind of double-edged move, Bishop H5. A lot of players don't like playing this move because they fear a very strong initiative for White on the king side after this move. We're about to see why. Bishop takes F3, Queen takes F3 is what I played against Ben and many other players, giving up the two bishops early. White does have a small edge after that. But the problem with the retreat bishop h5, it's a rather challenging move, and Daniel accepted the challenge, breaking the pin with the move g2, g4, weakening his king side, but it's this attacking move knight e5 that really puts the pressure on Black's position.
That's right, so we're not going to have a dry Caro-Kann today.
This is no dry Caro-Kann position at all. What White's idea is develop very quickly hereafter moves like queen b3, bishop g2, and even sometimes f4 and f5. And Black faces a serious offense, both in the center and the king side.
It looks fun for me to White, so we're going to keep a very close eye on this game. You know, yesterday there was no play here at the championship, but there was play across the street at the World Chess Hall of Fame. We had a historical throwback to a famous Marcel Duchamp-John Cage match, and we were lucky enough to play on this amazing musical chessboard where whenever you played a move, it would release a different circuit of music.
Note, yeah.
And so, you know, you and Maurice actually played a Blitz game using the board, and you can see here the musicians kind of interpreting the moves that you were playing.
Exactly.
And you were able to actually, even though it was technically a 3-minute game, you were able to kind of like keep that pace going. So the music was always very lovely. And then they had some contemporaries of John Cage also.
Bill and Dove, the artist Bill and Dove, they were terrific playing their games to start. They played good.
So they also played a slower paced game using this musical chessboard. And then we've got Yaz smiling.
Well, Maurice and
it was a lot of fun. I ended up losing on time in that one, although the position itself wasn't so good. I was down a pawn. I liked what I played on knight g5 in that game. Yeah, it was kind of funky move. I got the drop on you in that game.
You sure
but,
did.
You were just too quick for me.
And that was that was a tremendous opportunity to play on this really historic board. And I got a chance to play against Grandmaster Ben Finegold. He's really just like such an incredible 1-minute and 2-minute player. This was actually a 2-minute chess game that we're playing here.
And you guys were making a lot of music too. Again, for each move that you were making, a particular note or sound vibration. And so even though you're not hearing all of the noises that were made, or the music that was made during this game, it was really intriguing to hear all of the sounds from the chess moves.
Well, that's right, and here actually Ben Finegold had a winning position, but we both had about like 20 seconds left on the clock. I don't think he wanted to break the board, so he did something I'm sure Maurice wasn't very happy with, and we repeated moves.
I didn't like that. But you know, he's incredibly fast, by the way, is Ben, and I watched him play Blitz. We were also at Ballpark Village, the relatively newly opened Ballpark Village here in St. Louis, at where the St. Louis Cardinals play, or right across where they play from. And I watched him and Ben. We had this great activity for the day where we had the Girl Scouts coming down and hanging out, playing a human chess game. I got a chance to call that game as you and Ben played earlier at that day, in the day as well. And Robert Hess and Ben played a 2-minute game, and I couldn't believe it. They played maybe 40 moves in 20 seconds. I mean, it was so quick. Ben's hands are instantaneous when he plays Blitz. And the actual finish of the game, they played about 6 moves in the remaining minute and 20 seconds or so. I mean, it was crazy how fast they can move, how fast Ben can move. So it was a great day yesterday for chess here in St. Louis. The ladies and men were on the Jumbotron, just really showcasing chess in an amazing way here in the city.
That's right. I mean, the Girl Scout event was amazing, and it really shows how much chess has grown in St. Louis, because the Girl Scouts, they were asking me about a Queen Within because they had taken a field trip to a Queen Within. So even though a lot of them didn't play chess in their local schools all the time, they already had this knowledge of chess culture and history, and it was just an amazing event, and they were so inspired. In fact, Yasser was teaching one of them to play.
Actually,
G3, bishop G2, knight F3, king H2. So you see these girls, you know, they haven't played much chess before, but somehow they've got this like Yasser-like constellation.
Fortress.
And they're just like having a blast.
I owe you an apology, Jen. Jen was doing a simultaneous playing all of these young ladies at once, and I was hiding behind some of the young ladies and telling them to make moves. And Jennifer's moving across the boards. She's looking at a particular game, going, "Darn, these girls are really playing very well." But that was a lot of fun.
That's right. It was really tremendous. And the cool thing about that musical chessboard is that you can actually go to the World Chess Hall of Fame and play it on yourself. Now, you're not supposed to bang down the moves. In fact, we don't recommend you play 1 minute or 2 minute chess.
No.
Ben Finegold actually, at one point, he does tell me that he's gotten a little bit slower, but I think he was known as the fastest grandmaster.
Hand-eye coordination.
Maybe one of the most quick in the world, actually.
Exactly.
We're actually going to get him on the show later, and so we'll be able to ask him about some 1 minute, 2 minute tips.
By the way, let me get this out there right away. A shout out to Hikaru Nakamura. The World Chess Federation, the FIDE, has just released for the first time the rating list, the worldwide rating list for the best Blitz player in the world, as well as the best rapid chess player. That's basically 30-minute chess for rapid chess, 5-minute chess for Blitz. And America's Hikaru Nakamura is #1 on both lists, and very deservingly so. Anybody who's ever watched Hikaru play Blitz chess, it's awesome. I mean, he's in a league of his own, and America has the #1 player in the world in Blitz as well as rapid according to the rating list. So a shout out of congratulations to Hikaru for that.
I mean, the funny thing is, Nakamura, started out his career playing like Bullet and Rapid and Blitz.
That's what he was raised on.
He doesn't play as much Bullet anymore, but it was funny just to, be able to watch him just play these like super quick games. You see him sometimes. There was I think a video of him playing Magnus Carlsen a few years ago by Macaulay Peterson, but he doesn't play it quite as often as he used to, but it's kind of cool to see somebody in the top 10 who was raised on 1 minute and 2 minute. It's kind of a natural defense for those of you at home who have your coaches and your parents to tell you to slow down and stop playing 1 minute. Well, but
he's the exception that breaks the rule. But Hikaru did something that is absolutely legendary on the Internet Chess Club. He had played against one of the computer programs, a 1 minute game, where literally the game took more than 100 moves, and I think it was closer to 200 moves. Hikaru, had 1 minute on his clock, played, let's say, 200 moves, and get this is what's really incredible, he flagged the computer. The computer lost on time as he made 200 moves in the space of 60 seconds.
All right, guys, so you gotta, practice your mouse muscles and your...
and your brain muscles, too. So you gotta make good moves, not just quick and fast moves, but good moves. Outplaying a 2,900 or so computer program in 1 minute chess. Words fail me.
So now you have something to do over the weekend, right? And we're entering the weekend, so when you're not watching us, you can practice your 1 and 2 minute skills versus computers. Good luck with that.
Right. I have on my board, by the way, a very important contest. Alex Onishuk, who has been tortoise-like, slow, steady, made a win, made lots of draws. He's playing a crucial matchup against Alex Lenderman on board 3. Onishuk with the white pieces. He's looking to win this game. If he can win this game, he not only pushes down his rival Lenderman, but Onishuk would move up, I think, into a shared second. Let's see how this game started. I'm pretty sure it started as a queen pawn opening. Indeed it did. Queen's Gambit declined, and then this Rogozin system, bishop b4, pinning the knight to the king. Now, this was a favorite line of Garry Kasparov as white. He played it very often in his 1993 World Championship match against Nigel Short. A counter pin of a knight against this queen on d8. these moves have all been seen in international Grandmaster tournament practice. This move, c5, c4, not the most popular move, but the setup that white is looking to do is develop his bishop to d3 and castles. So black makes this interference move. He plays this move c5, c4 to restrain white's bishop from getting to this very nice diagonal on d3. We spoke about that in the French defense game of Melikina and Anna Zatonsky. Queen c2, just putting additional defense on the knight on c3, as well as eyeballing the e4 square. Many times for white to get an advantage, he needs to continue with the move e3, e4. So queen c2 fits in rather nicely in that scheme. Castles, knight d2. This may look like a retreating move, but again, as we'll soon see, I believe in the near future, white is playing for e3, e4, as well as the maneuver bishop e2 to f3 to put pressure on this pawn on d5.
Sounds like you like white.
I do. I've played very often. Now this is actually a very big decision by black. It may not look that way, but with the move knight c6, essentially what black is saying is, I'm not worried about this pin of the knight on f6. Black alternative, and a very important one, is to play knight b8 to d7, supporting the knight on f6 so that the queen can go to a5 without worrying about getting double pawns in case of a swap of bishop for knight. Knight c6 was played, castles, let me just update my board, castles as would be expected. And now again, very sharp battle of ideas. Notice that black has this pawn on c4. Black is playing for a majority on the queen side. White, on the other hand, has a majority in the center. White is going to try to utilize his majority with the move e3, e4, while combating black's majority on the queen side. Who has the advantage? Stay tuned, we'll find out.
And we've got Maurice Ashley with something on the women's side, a battle between Victoria Ni and Tatev Abrahamian, who, if she strings a few wins together, she could become a massive threat in this championship as well, because she's already played both Anna and Irina.
Exactly.
Indeed, Jen, it's actually not necessary for her to actually string together a few wins, because she's in such a good situation right now. She's only a half a point behind Irina and 1 point behind Anna. And remember, Irina and Anna play tomorrow. So any slip by those players, she could leapfrog one and maybe catch the other in this tournament. She has already played both of them, as a matter of fact. So she has a clear road in front of her. 3 players lower rated than she is. She could easily win 3 games, except this game has already started poorly for her. And I'm not sure about this line. After d5, you see her here with the black pieces. The move c4 was played. And correct me if I'm wrong, Yaz, but this move e5, losing a tempo to get an attack on this knight, is sort of a reverse Grunfeld, if you will, but with white a tempo ahead in this position. And Ni immediately took on c6. The move e5, by the way, was played after a long think by Tatev in this position. And after bc6, she played the move c takes d5, did white here. Knight c3 would have put enormous pressure on the center position, but it doesn't matter, because even now, this pawn's going to come under terrific attack. A simple trade on this square, for example, could run into the simple knight c3. The point being that this piece, bishop, is attacking that rook in the corner. It's not so easy to move this pawn, nor is it easy to defend, because this move, now you have the whole attack, typical Grunfeld style with the black pieces, but here you have it with white, and this d-pawn is under heavy-duty pressure. I'm not sure if this line is supposed to be sound for black, but Abrahamian is thinking quite a bit, looking at the position, and if it's her preparation, she's doing a good job of masking it right now, because she looks concerned. She is not moving quickly, and I think she realizes that she played poorly to get to this position. And what's she going to do, being in such a good situation and now maybe having blown it as early as move 9? That's just That's just terrible. Now, if we switch back, there's another interesting game afoot over in Guerrero Ramirez. Look at this position. How does this happen after just 5 moves? Well, take a look. Knight f3, d5, c4, and after d4, the move b4, and now this move, f6. I mean, this is not your standard moves in chess, but it does happen in this line in the ready system. Now e3, e5 was played, and now c5 because this pawn was under attack. And check it out, Black's decided it's not a day to move pieces just yet. The move a5 is on the board, trying to crack the structure on this side. So a really interesting game afoot there. Guerev at even right now. He wants to win some games to pull forward, pull himself back out of, for him, must be the basement. He was doing so well earlier, but dropped a couple of games, and now he's played the move bishop to c4. This move is not approved of by the computer, but I'm not sure the computer knows these kinds of positions really well, but it thinks that after captures on b4, Black has a good game, but it is showing this crazy line, which I was looking at earlier, this knight sacrifice on e5, followed by this crazy move, queen check. Boy, if you haven't prepared this could be a nightmare to play at the board for Black. So that's an interesting line to take a look at. Another game I wanted to show just really quickly is this position with Molnar and Shanklin. There was a pawn sacrifice that we didn't note happen after this position. The move h3 was played by White to maintain the bishop in case of knight h5. Well, the knight decided to go a different direction, knight e4. That's a pawn sacrifice. If knight had captured on e4 in this position, then pawn takes and queen takes, well, White would have had to face bishop b4 check, and the king has to move, and already Black has great compensation. So a lot of interesting games at the lower end, if you will, of the tournament. These players may not have a chance to win the tournament anymore, but there's still a lot of prize money at stake at the different places in the tournament, so still a lot to play for in these games. Back to you guys.
And we're actually going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with more from the U.S. Championship. Welcome back to our coverage of the U.S. Chess Championship. We have one pretty highly skilled listener, so we better watch our analysis today.
We better keep it sharp.
That's right. Actually, Nakamura was listening to our thoughts on his Blitz and Bullet career, and he kindly corrected me. Actually, he's been playing a lot of Bullet in the last couple of days on chess.com, which is
wonderful.
One of our sponsors.
Yes.
They're actually sponsoring the hashtag US Chess Champs question or comment of the day. So
right,
keep those questions coming. I don't think we want to give a chess.com diamond membership to Nakamura because I think
maybe he already has one.
I think he has a lifetime membership. Actually, he's been doing a lot of stuff there lately. I've been seeing his name pop up there a lot. In fact, I first learned about his Red Bull sponsorship from that website in an article by Chess Vibes, guy Peter Doggers.
Peter Doggers, who works for
chess.com.
Chess.com.
Yes, chess.com.
That's right.
I first found out about how that's really awesome for chess. More sponsorships by elite players, I think, is going to eventually have a trickle-down effect, and on top, that more players all over the world, and especially in the United States, can say, well, somebody's got a sponsorship in chess. This is a precedent-setting event, I think.
Absolutely, and kudos to Hikaru and Red Bull for tying the knot, so to speak, and to having a commercial sponsor for a specific player. These commercial sponsorships obviously are extraordinarily common in the world of athletics, the top athletes here in the United States, and Magnus.
It's got G-Star Raw, and then also other Norwegian sponsors.
But in terms of Americans, keeping in mind that Bobby Fischer refused all types of commercial sponsorship, I do believe that it is a breakthrough. Hikaru is one of the first players to get a commercial sponsorship, and I wish him all the success in the world.
And in other great mainstream news, we've got a USA Today article that came out just yesterday about how awesome the St. Louis Chess Club is.
Right.
You guys should check that out.
Yeah, that was a very nice mention there. That was cool. Yeah.
And finally, more exciting mainstream news. We've got our Hip Hop Chess Federation founder, Adisa Vanjoko. I've known Adisa for many years. He's always doing amazing things for the game, bringing it to more people. He's from the Bay Area. He brings chess and the message of nonviolence, martial arts, and music, and how all the three merge to tremendous number of youth in Bay Area. And now he's working on some projects with the World Chess Hall of Fame and the Chess Club. And last night he was at the Music and Chess event as well. So it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about all that. He is with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, with Adisa Vanjoko, the founder of the Hip Hop Chess Federation. Adisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's always an honor.
Adisa, you're here in St. Louis, checking out all that's going on. What do you think of the club?
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I was just telling Jen earlier, like, every time I come here, to be between the World Chess Hall of Fame and the St. Louis Chess Club, the energy is high, the education is high, like, the culture this is it. This is like the prime spot on the planet for chess. I can't imagine that there's anywhere else better than this.
Well, it's the capital of chess in America, so it's official by the U.S. Senate. You've been traveling, talking to young people. Where are the places you've been, and what have you been saying? Yeah,
so recently, Hip Hop Chess Federation has been expanding. We've been in the Bay Area between San Jose, San Francisco for the last 7 years. Now we're starting to do stuff in South Central Los Angeles. I just got some calls to do some stuff overseas. And we're working with the World Chess Hall of Fame to open an exhibit on the history of hip hop and chess in October. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited about it. I mean, we've got a whole database of chess lyrics. We've got all the different photos. I've been touching base with the street chess player photographers, you know what I mean? Like really bridging the gaps between, Bobby Fischer beating Boris Spassky in '72, Universal Zulu Nation setting up its organization for hip hop in '73, Brooklyn, Bronx, you know what I mean? And just showing all these connections that even once I started digging down, I didn't know. And so it's going to be very enlightening for the chess community, for the hip hop community, and really working on how can we use chess and hip hop as education tools and inspirational tools for all youth, but especially those at risk.
Well, I grew up playing chess in the parks of Brooklyn, and there's always music and definitely always hip-hop going on when I was coming up. Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize this intimate connection that hip-hop and chess have. I know that you have done an event recently, I believe it's the All Kings Invitational.
Yeah, we did.
Featured RZA and other artists.
It was amazing. Basically, what we had is we had RZA. We have a heavyweight belt that we give out every so many years, and so we had RZA defend his title against Emilio Rivera, who plays Alvarez on the Sons of Anarchy. We had Raka Irish Science from Dilated Peoples, the MMA fighter Halleck Gracie from the legendary Gracie family. They all came out, played. It was totally amazing. And we always have panels. And so if you go to hiphopchess.blogspot.com, you can find that panel on there. And I mean, we had some superintendents from the LA school district out. And it's really important to a lot of educators that chess is in the schools, that hip-hop is being used as an educational tool. And it was amazing. RZA won, and we had an LA chess boxer there. We had one of the guys who does chess boxing come out. And we talked about the ways that chess can heal, the ways that martial arts can heal emotionally and inspire physically. And so it's beautiful.
You made this point, there's this confluence of hip hop and chess, but you also have this martial arts jiu-jitsu component, which is also interesting. Tell us more about that.
Well, the way we got to LA was there's a jiu-jitsu legend. His name is Kurt Osiander, and he put together this competition called the KO finisher, where a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, people win on points, but jiu-jitsu is a match where people prefer to win by a chokehold or arm lock or a leg lock or something like that. So he was like, no points. It's a submission-only tournament. You either walk with your arm or you don't, you know? And I was looking for venues at the same time. So I called him. I was like, man, we got to do something together. Like, I can't be doing a chess event and you doing a jiu-jitsu event on the same day in LA. That's corny. Let's do something. He was like, let's do it. So he let us host it there. And, you know, there's a lot of connections between the art of jiu-jitsu and chess. One of the main ones is strategy. Like, if I grab your wrist, in jiu-jitsu, there's a specific way or several specific ways you might respond. And then how will I respond to those potential responses? That's very much like chess. The other part is checkmate. You know what I mean? For a jiu-jitsu person, the chokehold or the arm lock or the leg lock is the checkmate. And the positional dominance, right? Like, you can't get to that checkmate unless you have the positional dominance. And so the grips, everything are like pawn moves and night jumps and everything else that make the game live wire. And so I've written extensively. I just wrote something on chess.com in my blog there about the connections between chess and jiu-jitsu, specifically as it related to destroying the guard of someone. In jiu-jitsu, there are several kinds of guards, and there are several different ways that you have to approach them. And if you mistake your method of approach, you'll fail. Just like if someone's fianchettoed and you're trying to destroy that guard, you know what I mean? Depending on how you set your pieces up, depending on which pawn or bishop you attack first, you know, you can also fall.
Absolutely. I studied Aikido for many years, and the connection between Aikido and chess, I credit that understanding with making me into a grandmaster today, in fact, because it was just so explosive and interesting, and the fighting style, and you talked about defending the guard and positional dominance and all that. That's all there. Tell us, finally, how kids are responding to this approach versus the traditional chess approach, just teaching them chess. You're bringing in stuff that the young people nowadays are feeling like martial arts and particularly hip-hop.
Well, you know, they're being really inspired initially by the lyrics. That's kind of like the bait, right? Like, hey, listen to this RZA lyric. Let's check out Jay-Z or Dr. Dre. But really what ends up happening...
Who all play chess, by the way.
Yeah, they all play chess. But like, for instance, Dr. Dre just cut that Beats deal for his headphones. It's like $3 billion deal or whatever. Okay, on the cover of XXL magazine, which is one of the biggest, you know, hip hop mags around, he was on the cover playing chess, right? So I'm like, I recently saw an interview with him in what was that movie called? It was called The Art of Rap. He was being interviewed by Ice-T, and he said in the 27 years that he's produced, he's only missed 2 weeks of not being in the studio. So I said, look, here's a chess player who has a serious work ethic. He ends up cutting $1 billion deal down the line. That's not an accident. You don't luck up on $1 billion deals. And if you do, you can't hold on to that money without a strategy. And clearly he's been influenced by chess. Clearly his work ethic is there. And so those are the things that inspire the kids. So like, they're not just looking at Jay-Z as, oh, he said the word chess. They're looking at Jay-Z as, what's he doing in his business? He's a good planner. Well, if you want to have good plans, you have to consistently look at the chessboard. Where should this knight be going next? Where should that bishop be headed? How can they work together? And so those kinds of things definitely keep the kids inspired. We've been growing a lot with the Boys and Girls Club in Menlo Park, and we're just starting to do a new mentoring program where they're going to do several weeks of chess, several weeks of learning like rap or poetry, and then they're going to learn some self-defense. And because, you know, Bruce Lee said that the whole point of martial arts was to help people express themselves freely without fear, right? People don't want to say the truth because they're afraid they'll be hurt. So once we give them those 3 things, now they can have these tools of self-discovery and figure out who they really want to be, and we help them go be that. And so it's beautiful. But I mean, really, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll never stop saying it. If you, if Jen, if Yasser, if all of these amazing players, all the people playing now, right, at the championships here, if they don't do their work, I don't have anywhere to point to. So what's happening here is so crucial. When I told my kids, hey, I'm not going to be at class because I'm going to St. Louis, they're like, what? like they're happy, you know. Will you bring me back something? Well, you know, they want a piece of St. Louis, you know, and so I'm hoping to bring that back to them. And then once we get to October and we start doing this event at the World Chess Hall of Fame, we're hoping to really, you know, share what we're doing with the people of St. Louis and see what they want to do to what works, what doesn't work. I want to help St. Louis thrive through chess and music and the arts. Absolutely.
And St. Louis wants to help you thrive with the work that you're doing. Great work fusing martial arts, hip hop, and chess. Adisa Vanjoko, President of the Hip Hop Chess Federation, founder of the Hip Hop Chess Federation. Thanks very much for being on our show.
It means a lot to me. Thank you all.
Jen, some really fascinating work showing all the possibilities of our great game and its wide reach in many different fields. Back to you guys.
And Adisa is going to be back in St. Louis in the fall for a lot of programming and an exhibition at the World Chess Hall of Fame.
Oh, wonderful. That's all wonderful.
Something to look forward to, and yet another reason to come back here in the fall, right?
Absolutely.
If the Singfield Cup wasn't enough. Although, actually, the hip-hop show will be opening after the Singfield Cup. But still, just keep coming back.
Exactly. First of all, it's wonderful to have Adisa on our show. One of the extraordinary things, I guess it was a year ago, time goes by so quickly, is in talking to Adisa, it really turns out that the first half of the 1970s was an extraordinary time of social impact. Bruce Lee exploded into our nation's consciousness with his martial arts movies. Hip-hop was being born. Bobby Fischer winning the World Chess Championship. And these three major confluences all occurred about the same time. And in talking to Adisa about that revolutionary change, I was stunned because it really happened while I was growing up too. And I was and still am a big Bruce Lee fan as well.
Great.
I've been watching the game, by the way, between our tournament leader, Anna Zatonsky, and Melikina,
playing white.
When we had left it just a few moves ago, it was roughly speaking this position, and Melikina did take this bishop on d4, queen takes d4, rook e1. And so white has sacrificed a pawn to make it as awkward as possible for Anna's king as to where it's going to go. Anna played the move b7, b6. That's a kind of, usually in a position this sharp, to play a slow pawn move like this, either A, shows that she's extremely well prepared, or B, is taking a very big risk by not declaring her intentions with her king.
Well, maybe the big idea here is that if bishop to e3, which by the way was played, by moving your, bishop e3 wasn't played, rook b1, but if bishop e3 immediately, now queen takes b2 is on the menu, and rook b1, and the pawn on b7 is no longer hanging because it's usefully now on b6.
Precisely, the pawn having moved to b6, after, for example, a move like queen takes a2, the rook cannot land on this b7 pawn because it's now on b6.
That being said, Alyssa just calmly defended the b2 pawn, but now the rook is a little bit out of play there on b1.
Well, that for sure, but also it's sort of like you sacrificed a pawn and then you played rook to b1, and rook b1, white's play doesn't make a great impression on me. Rook
so
c8.
Anna continued with rook c8, and now Alyssa did play the move that rook b1 prepared, bishop e3.
Right.
And now the question is, what happens after queen takes e5?
Precisely.
Now there's a couple of possibilities here for white. White could just snap the pawn on b6 to take advantage of that a disco attack, as we've been calling it.
All right.
But is there something even better than that? Because now I think the black queen can just retreat to b8, and the thing here is that we are now still up a pawn, right? Because we traded e5 for b6, and once we castle, as long as we don't get checkmated, those pawns in the center could later become a serious threat. But
exactly.
We do have to check here after castles whether there's any
double bishop sacrifice on very famous, many famous games of a double bishop sacrifice have occurred. In this case, with the knight on g6, however, there is a good defensive reaction with knight g6.
Right, and the same thing could occur if you try the rover, right? The knight is still blocking on g6.
Right, so for example, after king h7 back, rook e3, white's idea is to double on the h file and play queen h7 mate. The question that I really thought that black was going to pose in this exact moment is, instead of taking this pawn on e5, I was just wondering what white was doing for compensation after a move like queen a4. The queen is protected, of course, by the bishop on d7. So now after, for example, a move like b3, I'm not saying that this is the best move or anything like that. The queen just says, okay, I'm a pawn down. Go ahead and prove the compensation. Are you going to go over here, queen h5? Are you going to do something on the king side? Because white needs to play very aggressively. She has sacrificed a pawn, that is to say, Melikina has sacrificed a pawn, and it's important that she show compensation before black consolidates.
That's right, and it would be nice if she could prevent castling, but I suppose if instead of b3, if I had to play queen to h5.
Immediately, yes,
now,
like in this position.
Now, of course, there's extra pawns hanging, but you were just planning on playing knight to g6.
Indeed, I was. To block this diagonal so queen takes h7 is not checkmate.
And the weird thing is here, now I want to kind of switch over and have like h4, h5 in, and my queen's in the way.
But you put your queen on h5, you can't have it all. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not looking like honest preparation might be pretty good here.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously there's a reason that people don't play this as white. Tremendous surprise value, but Anna's just putting the question to Melikina, is this actually a good opening?
A good sacrifice. Well, let's put it another way. If it was a good sacrifice, the French would be unplayable.
If it was a really good sacrifice.
If it was a real good sacrifice.
There's somewhere in between being losing and really good.
That's right.
And Maurice Ashley has a thought on another critical game from the Women's Championship.
Indeed, Jen. It looks as though Anna's preparation looks great, but it looks as though Tatev Abrahamian, her preparation looks miserable. We talked about this exact position potentially being on the board, and it's here. After just 11 moves, this pawn is under heavy fire, a la Grunfeld style with the black pieces. This is what black wants. White often has an extra tempo, a bishop already out in the game, and the knight on this square, this line with the knight here, is known to have problems because of a bishop pinning the knight. Remember, you've got to imagine it with reverse colors. Here we see, but white having the first move, getting the pin, and having this long diagonal conquered, as well as a potential queen a4 check. So here black is suffering, trying to figure out what to do next. This pawn is under such heavy fire. If you try to block with this move, well, this is just simple stuff. Just take on f6. What are you going to capture with? This check is serious. First of all, if you take with the queen, we'll rip this off. So pawn takes, horrible for your position. And then this move, queen check, and you have to block with the queen. Blocking with the bishop is going to be terrible because of the simple queen to d4, and the pressure is on. A rook's going to show up on d1. This d-pawn is not long for the world. So queen a4 check would happen, queen to d7, and then you could just play simple chess here. Trade. King has to capture, bringing the king in the middle of the board, and then this move, rook to d1, actually even better would be this rook to d1, come to think of it, because now this pawn is pressured. This pawn is on capture as well. If you try to defend, then the other rook shows up on c1. The position is miserable. Black must be totally unhappy that she had such a good situation in the tournament, and now she's allowed herself to be in such dire straits. Now, another game I'm just really liking to look at. Yaz, what do you think about this position? This is one of those classical quiet games, right? No. I mean, this position looks positively erratic. I mean, the move bishop to c4, we saw these pawn moves early on. Ramirez decided, I'm going to just grab pawns. And after e takes d4, he captured back at the moment, up a pawn. But there's a funky move here. Queen to b3, testing that knight. It's impossible to defend the piece. Knight obviously has to go to h6, because if you dare play let me just get this going. If you dare play this move, obviously, well, that's basic mate. That is not going to happen. Just wanted to show you that variation. So the only way to defend this knight is to move it, to move to the h6 square. How much stranger can a game get? White could simply castle in this position, and I'm liking white. It's only 9 moves in, 8 moves in, and although Houdini is saying this position is perfectly fine for black, no issues, I like white. What do you think, Yas? I mean, look at this great development. The move rookie 1 check is coming, d3 with a knight on the side. This just looks like Ramirez has walked into something. If he's prepared this or knows Houdini tactics, I'm impressed. Guys?
Well, I like pawns, but I like white too. It looks like a tremendous compensation for white in the Timur Gadiev game. I hope that Ramirez is well prepared because on the face of it, whites were choice in that game.
Yeah, we tell our students not to play f6, right?
Well, it's funny. I'll go back to that game in a second. I'll show a position that I played against Viktor Korchnoi with f7, f6. But I'm looking once more at the game between Daniel Naraditzki and Gamsky, our defending champion. Just as I suspected, Gamsky's bishop is being bounced around the board, as we're about to see. We'll go back just a few moves from the current position to this moment, because this is a very key moment. And again, a lot of Caro-Kann players do not like the line of play that Gata has entered, and oftentimes simply acquiesce and trade off their bishop, giving white the slight edge of the 2 bishops. Gata took the challenge and played bishop back to h5, and Daniel pounced. He played g4.
Right, we saw this just as we moved away from this game.
Knight e5, putting pressure on the bishop.
And you like this for white. You were talking about bishop g2, queen b3, and all of the f4 possibilities.
As well as h3 and h4. I like these possibilities for white. In fact, so much so that Gata feels that the only move to defend the position is to move the bishop yet again. In all of our summer camps, we espouse the principle, avoid moving the same piece twice in the opening. Well, guess what?
More than twice.
This is once, twice, thrice, 4 times. Black has moved his light squared bishop 4 times, and in the meanwhile, Daniel is picking up tempi. He's played the move f2, f3, attacking the bishop yet again. So for the 5th time in, I think it's 10 or 11 moves, Gata has moved his bishop, and it's still not even in a safety position after the move bishop d3, which was played by Daniel Naraditzki. You cannot play the move e7, e6, trying to develop your bishop, because guess what? Your light squared bishop gets trapped in the middle of the board after c3, c4. So Gamsky early in this game is under a lot of pressure by the U.S. junior champion.
So he tried to move his bishop on g6 to a safer place, but it's getting nabbed there in some variations as well. So dangerous position for Gamsky and a critical game for us in the U.S. Chess Championship. We've got some developments in the Foyser Crush game. How's Irina doing, our defending champion? Maurice has more on that.
Well, it looks as though Irina was well prepared for this contest. She is playing super sharp chess now out of what was a very solid position. She decided to mix it up in ways that are typical for this line. When you take a look at this variation of the Nimzo, she played the move g5 here, attacking the bishop, and after bishop to g3, she played knight to e4, attacking both queen and bishop, and after queen c2, she played the typical move for this line, f5. You see black's pawns steaming down the board, and white decided to play the move d5 in this game. A typical pawn sacrifice here to break open the position, to breach this pawn structure, which Irina declined with knight to c5, and now Foyser decided to put even more pressure on the position with knight to d4. So a lot of pressure as this pawn structure is falling apart. It seems as though they're in a super exciting contest. And from Irina's standpoint, she's playing the black pieces in a crazy, wild position, while her opponent, or main rival, Anna Zatonsky, is playing the black pieces up a pawn at the moment, in a much more solid game. So there's a lot of pressure on the 5-time champion to keep pace. I should point out, by the way, that the variation I just showed you in Ni Abrahamian actually did not happen. She decided not to take with the pawn, did black, and took with the knight. And now the move Queen A4 is on the board, putting pressure on this isolated pawn and preparing a rook to come to D1. A lot of pressure on her position. Her pawn structure has now been shattered. So Abrahamian choosing this as the lesser of two evils, but still under a lot of pressure here. So the more this goes forward, the more it looks as though Anna Zatonsky is looking really great, sitting pretty in the women's championships. Guys?
That's right. This is going to be a pretty critical round for us as we enter the big Zatonsky Crush matchup tomorrow.
Right.
So stay tuned with us today at the U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's. We are going to take a quick break. And as usual, we have a lovely Fisher position for you guys to solve while we're away. So figure that out, and then we'll be back in just a few. Well, good job to those of you who solved the Fischer problem, which starts with queen to h6. And Maurice has the rest for us. And after that, we'll jump right back in for the action here at the U.S. Championship.
Indeed, Jen, this is an exciting position all around. The move bishop f6 was the move that wins. The move queen h6, excuse me, was the move that wins. But I wanted to go back just a couple of moves to the move bishop f6 that started it all. After bishop to f6, this beautiful move by Fischer, trying to expose the king. Of course, if you capture this bishop, you have to face off against queen and pawn and a knight hurrying into the game, possibly even a rook showing up. So his opponent after bishop f6 tried to bring his queen back, but Fischer brought the knight to e4, and suddenly there was a cluster of white pieces coming around the king. The move g6 was played, and now queen to g5, and after a trade, here came the white rook, and after c4, h5, just ignoring the demonstration on this side, the capture, and then rook h4, and here, after the move rook to a7, trying to defend against any capture, bishop to g2, and Fischer was totally ready. Here's our position to play the move queen to h6, and the game went queen to f8, and now I know everybody solved this next move. Queen takes on h7, check, a simple but beautiful queen sacrifice. Of course, after king takes queen, then simply pawn takes, double check, which is why the rook is here, and also why the bishop is here, because obviously if the king goes back, he gets mated by a rook, but king takes pawn ends in a very simple and elegant and dominant checkmate. So Fischer was able to win his game in style, as he often did. Back to you guys.
A lovely queen sacrifice there by Bobby. And very reminiscent of those King's Indian attack positions that Gamsky had against
Lenderman. That was his
earlier,
win right before the rest day, and kind of bringing him back into contention at this championship. And
that dark square control on the f6, h6, and the g7 checkmate, ready to go checkmate.
That's right. That was a cool game, and kind of neat that the material was almost equal, and Lenderman just had to resign because he was in total zugzwang.
Exactly.
Couldn't move a thing.
I brought up on my screen what is a critical game for our tournament standings in the U.S. Championship. We have Alex Onishuk as white against Lenderman, and we knew that Lenderman was going to be facing this very difficult task of playing the two top favorites in the tournament with black pieces in back-to-back rounds. And in Onishuk's last move was this very nice building move. I like this move very much. Rook on f1 to d1. Notice this white center is getting ready to rumble by advancing in moves like d4, d5, and e3, e4, routing black's pieces. Black has this very nice majority on the queen side, but it's not doing anything at the moment. So Lenderman has to find some good moves that restrain white's center, because if Onishuk gets a chance to just advance, he'll blow black off the board, and that will be a huge win. I was thinking that Lenderman was going to have to play a move like knight b4. At the moment, the queen doesn't have the greatest choice of squares. I suspected queen b2 was what Alex had in mind. And then you always have to be mindful that a knight might jump to d3. There were some sharp variations I was looking at with knight f6 to d5. I don't think that that was Lenderman's choice. Let me just get up the current position on our board. Rook f d1. I saw on the webcam that a move or two had been played, so my board hasn't been updated yet, but Lenderman in trouble, in my view, in this crucial round.
Well, that will certainly shake up the standings, as some of our leaders seem to be kind of catching pace these days.
Exactly. Well, we saw this kind of slow start in this very tight field, this all grandmaster field. I've been saying it several times. I consider this championship one of the strongest championships ever, and I thought that in this tightly bunched field, a low score may win the tournament, but Akobian has suddenly set this pace with 3 wins in a row, and everybody's feeling the pressure to keep contact with our tournament leader, Varugian Akobian. And so we're seeing some very bloody rounds. The previous round, I think we had something like 8 decisive results. So,
yeah, we're not disappointed by these championships and the number of decisive games. It's really going fantastically.
Exactly.
We do have the 30-move draw rule, but even beyond that,
the players are playing hard. Yeah.
They need to if they want to try to win this championship, and particularly in the women's championship. It's often a very big +4 that takes first place. This year, probably not as high as usual. I mean, we had years where 8.5 won. There was an 8 out of 9. Last year it was 7 out of 9, I believe.
Right.
So this year, I believe we'll see also 7 out of 9. What do you think?
It sounds right. Yeah, 7 out of 9. That could be the winning score this year.
Although
and
it
again,
might be just a playoff.
That would be fun too, but everything will come down to that penultimate round tomorrow.
That's right. Well, Anna Zatonsky, we're really liking her game against Adisa Vanjoko. Now, you know, I've actually played this opening in Blitz before with this pawn sacrifice that Adisa played, or kind of other versions of this too, this opening where the more traditional way of sacking the pawn as well.
Right.
And I know that I kind of hate it when they get their queen to h4. Because even though it seems like it would be an awkward square for the queen where you could attack it and get pieces into the game, in fact, it actually limits our ability to get our queen into the game because it covers both the g4 and the h5 squares, which are 2 critical squares to get that white queen into the battle.
Well, let me just show our viewers what you've been talking about there, Jen. After the move bishop e3, we did not see Anna playing the move queen a4 or queen takes e5. Instead, she has played queen to h4, and the idea of having the queen over on this side of the board, just as you were saying, white wanted the opportunity to either play queen g4 or queen h5, and that black queen taking up a position on the king side means that you're probably going to have to play a move like g3. Now, I'm a little bit worried
Unless you could do a rover, but that seems like it's going to be hard with the rook on b1 and the bishop in the way on e3.
Exactly. So I'm just a little bit worried that there's the potential for a repetition, a draw by repetition, if after the move g3, we were to see the queen dropping to h3. So this is the repetition I'm a little bit worried we might see in this game.
And of course, Anna here can decide to consider snapping that pawn on e5 after inducing the g3 weakness, because again, after bishop takes b6, queen b8, as we looked at earlier, it's not clear that white has enough compensation here as well, and this is a game.
Exactly, and the point here is that white has been provoked to playing the move g2, g3. Normally speaking, you're not unhappy about having made a luft, but in those positions where we're looking at the, we were looking at the possibility of a rover after a bishop sacrifice. Well, now that the pawn is on g3, it actually stops white's rook from slipping over to the h file.
We can try the e5 square, but that runs into f6. So indeed, this is a potential problem for Melikina, and I don't think Zatonsky's going for the perpetual in this game. But we do have Grandmaster Ben Finegold, and actually, I believe that he taught Melikina this opening some years ago for a World Junior Championship. So he'll definitely have some great insights on this, as well as giving us a little bit of the feel over at Leicester's, the sports part where they're playing a live commentary with Ben and Robert Hess.
Exactly.
And Ben Finegold, he is a St. Louis local, and he is with Maurice Ashley.
Thanks, Jen. With Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Ben, you said that you guys are real excited about some of these positions that are going on. Let's first go to the leaders, and tell us about this game. You had an insight into the preparation that went into this game.
Yeah, well, my commentary partner, Robert Hess, he said he played soccer earlier this week with Postny, who was here with Ehrenberg as his second. And Postny actually plays this variation with black all the time. All of the games were Postny's games. Ehrenberg had no games in this line. So obviously they prepared this together, and Akobian was thinking really early. And I think Ehrenberg equalized pretty easily. And they're obviously out of the prep now because Ehrenberg played a move that hadn't been played before. So, okay, maybe white's a tiny bit better, but I think the opening preparation went to Ehrenberg.
Indeed. Very interesting. Players have their seconds at the event. Let's go to this one where Naraditzki seems like he's trying to blow Gamsky off the board. It's kind of hard. The knights are already off the board. What did you think of this game?
Well, I'm sure Yasser mentioned that this is the game that Yasser beat me a couple of years ago in the U.S. Championship. He played the knight d7 Caro. I thought White was going to play solid for a very small plus with c3. Then he played h3 g4, playing for a big advantage. And Gamsky seemed taken aback by this. He thought a long time on bishop e4. And there's some Webster grandmasters here at the commentary room at Leicester's, and they all like White. Fidel Corrales, of course, very aggressive player, likes to play g4, h5. And I was surprised, but Anatoly Bykhovsky, who's a very solid player, who I thought would like Black, also likes White's position. The only person in the commentary room who thought Black was doing pretty reasonably was Robert Hess. He liked that Gamsky's playing solid position. Another grandmaster in the commentary room thought it was funny that Gamsky's bishop's usually on c8 trapped in these positions. He got his bishop to a good square. So I think both players are pretty happy. White has an initiative on the king side. But this seems like a kind of position Gamsky likes because White has potential weaknesses later in the game.
Indeed, and already Gamsky's looking to play the move queen to g3 with check. Now, another game important for us, as Jen mentioned, that you taught Melikina, this opening, was this the exact line you taught her?
Right. Well, knight bd2 was the line that she wanted to learn for the 2010 World Junior in Poland, and she actually scored 3-0 with this move. She played knight bd2 earlier in this tournament against Sabina Foizor, was completely winning.
Totally winning.
Lost the game. And she said yesterday in private talks with some of me and my friends that she was going to do this again, even though Zatonsky won with Black in this opening against Tatev Abrahamian earlier in the championship a year or two ago. And Zatonsky obviously expecting Melikina to play it. So we were surprised that Melikina would keep repeating this line. She must think it's good for White. We're a little skeptical in the commentary room. White's giving a pawn away pretty early. I'm sure Yasser was fancying Black's chances, being a pawn up so early, playing a French defense. And
Yasser's never seen a pawn he doesn't like.
Exactly. I didn't like the move rook c8 because I thought she should move her knight off of e7, knight c6. Then her queen could get back to e7 really easily. Now she's making a lot of queen moves, so I think White has pretty good compensation here. Still, I think Anne is happy being a pawn ahead.
Indeed. Well, let's go to a couple of games that I liked and are just simply insane. First of all, this game between Gureyev and Ramirez. I mean, have you seen a chess position look like this early on? Black's already up 2 pawns, and his king has moved to f8. What are your thoughts about this game?
Well, we went to the ballpark yesterday, and when we were playing against a lot of little children, we saw lots and lots of pawn moves. So I thought this was a continuation of that. Ramirez making pawn moves the first 7-8 moves of the game. Actually, it's funny. Kramnik had both sides of this opening, but he was playing Blitz and Rapid, so a little suspicious. And White could have actually sacrificed earlier. If we go back to the position after a5, I believe, White's actually played a move knight takes e5 here, and in this position, knight takes e5 is the game of Van Wely versus Kramnik. And they were repeating moves with this queen check. Eventually, Van Wely tried to win, but it was a draw anyway. So this was a really crazy game. We were really following it intently because both players were taking a lot of time. And this seems like the least likely game to be a draw. Black's 2 pawns up, but just has no development at all. So this is the exciting game of the round, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's so erratic to see all these pawn moves and a king move. Who would tell any student to do that in the opening?
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm doing commentary at these tournaments, I'm always like, what do I tell my students? All these openings, the players are playing anti the strategy that we teach, but they have other things in mind. And sometimes they know better. Sometimes they don't.
Sometimes indeed. And it looks like in Tatev's game, Abrahamian looks like she didn't know better in this position because it looks as though she's about to drop a pawn cold.
Yeah, we agree. This was the worst 7th move of the tournament. In this position after c4, e5, then you're in a Grunfeld 2 tempi down, sort of a sharp variation. Hess was very impressed, though, that Tatev played knight takes d5 here. He thought c takes d5 was just going to lose a pawn for sure, and that she'd have some chances, but I don't like her chances. You know, I made the crazy prediction, my first one of my life, that Black would win all 5 games in the women's. And after about 10 moves, I think I like White's position in every game. But I still got the 5 Black wins in the women's tournament. So we'll see if I'm right.
Indeed. Well, thanks so much for your insights, Grandmaster Ben Finegold, and for your wit. Go over to Leicester's and you guys get the fun. You get to eat and do commentary.
A little of everything.
Indeed. Back to you guys.
5 Black wins? 5 Black wins? Well, I mean, that's
a bold prediction.
That's
He's
incredible.
Not paying even odds, I don't think.
No, that's a trifecta of sorts, if that were to come true. looking at this Gamsky game, our defending champion Gamsky as black against the U.S. junior champion Daniel Naraditzki. Provoking Daniel to try to seize the initiative. This last move by Queen D6 is impressing me a great deal. I like that very much, setting up for a Queen G3 check that Daniel has got to stop. And I'm a little bit concerned that Daniel's H4, H5 didn't make too much sense to me. If we just went back a few moves, where I really like what was happening here from White's point of view, Bishop D3, G7, G6. I mentioned that Black could not play the move E7, E6. The C4 move traps the light square bishop in the middle of the board. Queen E2, everything was really good. And now Daniel did something that kind of strange to my eyes, at least. He played for H4, H5, costing himself 2 tempi. We talk about opening principles, and one really excellent opening principle is develop your pieces. So here I thought bishop c1 to h4 to f4 was an automatic, reinforcing the knight and just waiting for black. First of all, with the bishop on f4, you're denying black's queen the d6 and c7 squares because of the fatal discovery. If black was to put his head into a noose and castles, well, then h4, h5, you're off to the races, let's go checkmate. That was not what Daniel did. Instead, he played the move h4, and I thought that this was a very slow developing attack because of this move, queen d6.
So you would have preferred a bishop f4, kind of anticipating queen to d6.
Precisely. First of all, you're putting your bishop on an excellent square, eyeballing the center, of course. And now after the move queen d6, if white has to play the slow play the position with the move rook h3 to stop queen g3, well then I'm thinking that after castles followed by e7, e5, and the initiative has swung completely in black's favor. So these weaknesses that Ben alluded to, weaknesses on the king side in the sense that you've advanced on the king side, you leave a lot of squares unprotected in the wake of the pawn expansion, could come back to bite Daniel Naraditzki, and a win here by Gata, and it's early to make such a suggestion, would be huge.
Right, so what other possibilities do you see for Naraditzki here, instead of, like, as you pointed out, just like more passive defensive move rook to h3? Yeah,
again, that move rook h3 is not impressing me that much. I also, a very important tactic, h7, h5, h6 would look really good if it meant that, for example, after g5, you could trap this bishop. But that's not possible. Bishop takes g5, bishop takes g5, and queen g3 rescues the game for black thanks to the double attack against the king and the bishop, and black is in fact winning. So h5, h6, that too is a bad move. So I'm looking at several bad moves. Rook h3, h6, bad. Also, I think
we could play h6 and then follow it with a defensive move.
Yeah.
So instead of after queen d6, we could play h6 here, and then after bishop f6, we could make a move that threatens g5, perhaps your rook h3 now.
Well, yes, exactly. But in this case, because the pawn is advanced to h6 and there's no longer the possibility of opening up the h-file, I think black's king would be quite safe on the king side.
And now where does our king go as white?
Right. As white, your king isn't that comfortable sitting in the center. If you swing it over by castling along, don't forget that bishop on d5 does do something. In fact, it attacks the pawn on a2. So Daniel, he doesn't have those really, really nice options. If we go back just a few moves.
Possibly he missed this maneuver of queen d6 at some point. He probably thought that h4, h5 was coming with so much force.
Yeah, I think he simply underestimated it. Probably it flickered in his mind that queen d6 was possible. You may have just anticipated that he'd have a good move. He could play the rather awkward move king a f2, protecting the g3 square. But again, I think goddess for choice quite suddenly after castle long, followed by e7, e5. And
well,
let's see,
h6 here.
h6 here. In this case, the bishop is indeed trapped. There's no queen g3.
I mean,
So-
obviously you could play bishop f8. But
Right. After h6 in that position, the bishop would be forced to retreat to
Which
the
would give,
f8, which will give white some time to try to
yeah,
catch
perhaps
up.
try to reroute the bishop on c1 to g3 or something like that to take the sting out of e5.
Exactly. But eventually, with the king side closed, white's king still on f2, I'm going to say it's a remarkably sharp, from a strategic point of view, it's a remarkably sharp position, still quite early. I don't like white's choices, frankly. They don't feel unnatural to me to play a move like king f2.
Right. And we've got another big game in our U.S. Championship. Onishuk and Lenderman, the two Alexes face off. How's that game going?
Well, Jen, we talked about other games blowing up. This one definitely has full-fledged exploded. And Alex Onishuk, has to start finding only moves right now or else he's losing. But the reality is he's not losing in the position. So let's not overstate the situation. He just has to be accurate right now. Here in this position, he played the move b3, attacking black's advanced pawn structure, and black ignored it with the move rook to c8 and allowed this pawn to be exchanged on the c4 square. Of course, white would love to play a move like e4 at some point in the game, but he's got to always worry about his pawn on d4 under threat. Hence, he played the move rook fd1, and now black played this provocative move, knight to d5, seeking exchanges, causing tension in the position. The first exchange happened here, and then the next move was played bishop takes c4, temporarily winning a pawn. But the move knight cb4 has now been played, and this queen is under attack. So are the tactics. This rook has been unleashed down the c-file. And in this moment now, precise moves have to be played. You can't play any nonsense. If you just drop your queen back, for example, then you run into the move knight takes on c3, queen takes c3, and then b5, and there goes your bishop because it's pinned along that file. So right now, white has to solve that problem. Knight takes d5 is a simple way to do it because he's attacking black's queen as well. And after the move bishop takes d5, now it's a choice of where to put the queen. There are a couple of places that you know Onishuk will figure out, but one that's interesting to me is the move queen b3, and Houdini gives this line, rook takes on c4, an exchange sacrifice followed by the move b5, pinning that knight. Looks very good for black, but it turns out that a3 is a simple response. Now, if this knight were to move, then the b-pawn drops. So black has to ditch the knight with the move a5, and now captures, chasing the queen. The queen has to drop back. We'll just put it on b1 for now and inspect this position after it takes. Is 5 pawns to 5. Black is down a full exchange. But there are 2 connected passed pawns in the position. But for white, there's also these 2 passed pawns. If you could one day push to e4, then this pawn could become a problem as well. So this position already rich, already interesting. Onishuk really would love to win today because he's right behind the leaders in striking distance. A win would put him right in the thick of things going into the final rounds of the championship. Guys?
Absolutely, a game we want to keep a close eye on. Onishuk versus Lenderman. Lenderman obviously had a running start, but he's been faltering lately. Can he come back, or will his misery increase? Another game I want to take a look at is the battle between Varuzhin Akobian and Sergei Ehrenberg, because Varuzhin Akobian is our tournament leader. If he can keep winning, it might just put him ahead of the pack, because, you know, remember he has white against Gamsky.
Absolutely. And
Not that Gada doesn't know how to play for a win with black. I'm sure he will do his best if that's what the tournament dictates.
Right.
But it'll be much easier for him to try to win with whites and then see if he can make a solid draw against Kobian.
Exactly. Ben Finegold, Grandmaster Ben Finegold, who was just on our show, set up the table very nicely in our game 1 position between Var and Sergei. Sergei's playing a defense that he's not that familiar with, but he worked obviously with the second Posny from Israel, I believe. Grandmaster Posny from Israel helping him. And when VAR went for this position, I'm sure he had in mind the move e4, e5, correctly perceiving that if he could chase away this knight on f6, which is defending the square h7, like for example, knight d5, this would be a dream come true for white. Queen e4 sets up this battery, the queen backed by the bishop on d3.
And now you really wish that pawn wasn't on h6, because now you can't even play g6 because the pawn on h6 would hang.
And this would be a total catastrophe.
I mean, yes, there are some potential discoveries here, but I don't think there's even any good ones.
Exactly. That would be catastrophic for black. However, black does have the far superior retreating move, knight on f6 to d7.
So now this is hinting at the idea of playing bishop takes f3 and then capturing on e5, perhaps.
Precisely, while also denying white's queen the e4 square. White could continue with bishop f4, but this is anything, all three results are possible in this position.
Now, how does rook d1 look in that position as well? Trying to tactically deal with the threat of the threats on f3 and e5.
Okay, so your point was that in case of takes,
Well,
or you were going to take with the pawn on
I might have to, because I'm not sure this position quite works out for me, does it?
Right.
Because now after bishop to h7...
Your queen is under attack as well. Bishop h7 check.
And this leads to some interesting variations now. Well, I think you also might be able to just take on h7.
Okay.
Yes, because after queen to e4 check, we have f5, and now the rook is hanging on d1 as well.
And then you just recapture the queen. That would be winning for black. And what you're saying is there's a back rank mate that white has to worry about as well.
That's right, and we're up a piece. So if f5, if you just have to play queen to e2, then we just develop our queen to f6, and we're up a knight.
Agreed.
Or a little pony, as some of the Girl Scouts said yesterday.
Yeah, pony became horsey and pony. Move to horsey. Okay, so after knight d7, rook d1, bishop f3, we just don't like this move gf3. We don't like exposing the white king. And after a move like queen h4 posting up on the king side, black is going to be very satisfied.
And you instinctively saw all of this when you played bishop f4.
Right.
And that's why
well, bishop f4
just doesn't feel right. It feels like bishop f4 feels right.
Well, bishop f4 is, first of all, a developing move. Learn to develop your pieces. So bishop f4 protects the pawn on e5. Also, with the bishop on f4, if you could ever get the queen behind the bishop, there's possibilities of bishop h6. But here, in this position, white is absolutely anxious to bring his rook into the center of the board. And again, an advantage to white thanks to this pawn on e5. However, it's not all roses for white. After a move like queen e7, black often is going to move his rook on f8 to d8, and then when that knight gets back to f8, remember in the game that Jacobian played the round before against Ray Robson, he had this really powerful defensive retreat, knight f8, knight d7 f8, and white's attack on the king side was not only stymied, it actually went into clear reverse.
That's right, and that knight ended up on f4, right? Knight f8 to g6 to f4, and
Precisely.
g5 happened later in the game.
And that was a win for Jacobian as black. So here, VAR is going to maintain his very, very slight edge, thanks to his spatial advantage. He's going to have to play very accurately to keep pressure on Sergei Ehrenberg.
That's right, because Sergei Ehrenberg has some really nice play with his bishops here that, we've talked about how nice it is to have a bishop on d3 and a pawn on e5, but here Ehrenberg is got some nice piece play to compensate for the weakening move h6. I'd like to remind everyone, we've mentioned it several times in the broadcast, but tomorrow, the big game between Irina Krush and Anna Zatonsky. Irina Krush will be playing white, which is actually even more exciting for us because at the moment, Anna's ahead by half a point. So in a way, it's always even more thrilling when the player who's behind gets the white pieces, because then they go for the crush.
The crush.
Yes, of course. They go for it, and you know, they have to, the black player, you know, risks getting basically leapfrogged.
Exactly.
Right?
Right. And we'll have much to tell in tomorrow's broadcast about that fantastic rivalry between the 9 times U.S. champion, 5 times Irina, 4 times Anna, as they go head-to-head tomorrow, which in a game I think is going to decide the women's national championship title.
Most likely, although they both still have to win today. And both games look like they're going to heat up later. And
well, one day at a time.
We have Maurice with the Foyser Crush game and the development in that Nimzo Indian, where Irina's playing the black side of an opening she's championed so many times from white.
Indeed, Jen, this game is already opened up. Irina has captured a pawn in the middle of the board, but she faces some difficulty and some tricky decisions to make at this point. If we just go back a few moves after knight to d4, Irina decided it was high time to capture on d5 and then play the move bishop takes on d5, being up a pawn temporarily, and instead of trying to get her pawn back with any moves, bishop to b5 check was an interesting line here, challenging the king to move. Instead of doing that, Foyser played the move f3, a different test of the variation, now challenging the structure of these pieces, particularly the knight, to guard this pawn on f5. Now, this is the position that Irina is sitting in. There are different decisions she could make here. A simple one would be to get rid of these bishops as soon as possible, but now you see that this f-pawn is definitely hanging. She will have her majority on this side and opportunities, but she's going to have to be careful about her king and, of course, a knight planting itself on the f5 square. So she's trying to judge that position quite finely. Will be very tricky for her to do to maneuver through those complications. Now, another game, the game that you mentioned before between Anna and Melikina, her main rival, that is Anna Zatonsky and Melikina. We liked black for some time, but as Grandmaster Finegold pointed out, this rook move allowed this queen to get chased around. And remember, this queen started on b6, it came to d4, it shifted to h4, then it shifted back over this side and to a4, and now it's on a3. Doesn't leave a great impression, and white does have the 2 bishops, in particular this dark squared bishop. We saw in that Bobby Fischer example how that bishop was able to encourage itself, find this incursion on the f6 square and get some attack going. Not obvious how to do that right now, but there is now more of a smidgen of compensation that white wanted initially before going into this position. So that game we will keep our eye on. For the 3rd player in the women's tournament, Abrahamian, she has simply ditched a pawn. We had talked about that bad opening she played. She's going to be disgusted at herself for just being down a pawn for no reason, for nothing. Maybe for a little bit of compensation against this B pawn she's going to fight for because she has better development at the moment. It looks as though there's a problem with white having to get this bishop out and deal with this pawn on b2. But the reality is a pawn is a pawn is a pawn, and no way Abrahamian should win this position. A draw is really not great for her. And look at her, the way she has her head in her hands, quite disgusted with herself for having allowed this position to appear on the board, a pawn down, practically tossing away her chance at the title when really she was paired down with 3 weaker players to deal with, and now against one of the lower rated players in the competition, she has just simply blown it and now just fighting for her life. So she's going to have to deal with those emotions moving forward. In one other game we should get back to, this game's just funky. I love this crazy position. The game between Gurev and Ramirez, and look at this mess of a chess position. Gurev got super aggressive in the position after knight to d2, knight to c6, knight e4 attacking the bishop, bishop dropping back, and now the move f4. Pawn moves galore in this game, trying to pry open the position with the move f5, but Ramirez was real cool. He said, this bishop is my problem, I'm going to go after it, and bishop takes g8. There's no way to maintain it on this diagonal anyway because the knight was guarding the b3 square. So Gurev has played bishop takes g8. The computer loves black here. 2 pawns up. Says, you're not going to get at my king. I'm going to defend well. What do you really have here? It just recommends rook takes on g8, and it's saying it's fine even after this very scary looking move to humanize anyway, f5. Back to you guys.
That is a scary looking F5. Two-pawn sacrifice. You don't see that at these levels very often. Timur Gariev showing his willingness as well as his need to mix it up. He's slipped. He's fallen out of favor in the leaderboard. So he has taken dramatic risks today against Ramirez, which really remarkably enough is at the lower end of the table while he was our finalist last year. So
well, that just shows you how tightly contested this event is. And remember, last year it was a Swiss. This year, a nine-round, 24-player Swiss. This year, a 12-player round robin. So.
Exactly, but a big swing. You know, he had a breakthrough result with his finalist. Right, he came so close to drawing to winning the title against Gamsky in a playoff. And I'm sure Alejandro approached this tournament with, you know, can I do it even a little bit better than I did last year? And so he'll be very disappointed, but that doesn't mean that he's not trying to win games and position himself for a nice prize.
Well, we certainly got excitement in store in this round, and some more excitement coming up later in the year. We got the Sinkfield Cup, and then also we have the first tournament of its kind, the Millionaire Chess Open, that's coming to Las Vegas in October, and Maurice Ashley is the organizer of that.
Welcome to the world of the surreal. You take the blue pawn and return to the comfortable world of chess tournaments as you know them. You take the red pawn and I'll show you a chess event beyond your wildest imagination.
And that was a commercial for Fat Jim Studios, which along with Spectrum Studios is bringing you guys all of this U.S. Chess Championship coverage, and as well as some post-game shows which air on the Cardinals games.
Right, we're doing that during the 7th inning stretch. At some of the Cardinals games you can do. Maurice is doing a recap of the round for baseball fans. So It's very exciting, and our thanks to our sponsors for making that possible.
That's right, and then before that, we saw a Millionaire Chess promo, and so chess coming to Vegas in October, and also the USCF national event, the National Open, coming this summer.
Also, the National Open event is one of the most popular open events in the country. Vegas, fun town, of course, but Al Losoff and his team do a great job at that event. I just
Well, who doesn't
that's
want to
fun.
go to Vegas, really?
Exactly.
Chess, poker, especially me.
You're happy, are you? I'm looking at the Gamsky, Naraditzki Gamsky game, and when we had left the game just a few moves earlier, I was questioning whether Daniel was pleased with the outcome of his opening. The last move, Queen D6, had set up this very annoying Queen G3 check possibility.
So instead of the Rook H3 or H6 moves that we were proposing,
Daniel
played
played Bishop E4. And this is a real success, I think, for Black, because essentially that Bishop on D5, which was perhaps questionable or misplaced, this move, Bishop E4, basically says, no, I think your bishop's actually pretty good. And the idea is the queen check, in this case, would not be dangerous because the F3 pawn is now defended. The diagonal of the bishop on D5 is blocked. So,
but earlier we were talking about attacking for white, and now it's all about defense.
Yeah, or just keeping the position, if you will. Castles by Gamsky, a clear sign. Well, first of all, now we know the address of the black king, but a clear sign also that Gata is preparing a central break, which if it's mishandled by white, black will be seizing the initiative. Bishop E3, and now I'm expecting, I like Gata's position, I'm expecting the move rook on H8 to E8, reinforcing the threat of the central break E6, E5, and basically asking white a question, what are you going to do? White would not be happy putting his king over on the king side. I think that would actually be a big mistake. And equally, I think it would be a mistake to play the move castles because this pawn on A2 doesn't look like much of a pawn, but guess what? It did a moment ago help cover white's king, and after all, a pawn's a pawn. And white has difficulties. I don't see any compensation for bishop takes A2. So after this move, rook on H to E8, white has to decide how he's going to handle the situation with his king, as well as how is he going to handle the central break E7, E5. A quick comment was that in case of white playing rook down here to H7, going after the bishop on G7, well, black's got this nice little move, rook H8. The bishop is untouchable because of the skewer on the first rank. Black would win material. So I think overall Gata is doing quite well, and Danya Naraditzki as white has some issues that he needs to solve to keep the position.
That's right, and we've got some people logging into Twitter and their email accounts and sending us questions and comments. We've got Geek Chess at Kevin G, or Kevin G at Geek Chess. What is this? We got Nerd Chess the other day, Geek Chess. These very outdated names, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, he asked, actually, I don't know, maybe it's not outdated because Geek is now hip, right? It's kind of like reverse.
It's cool to be square.
Well, it's one of those things that the geek chic has become like so prominent that people brag about being a geek. Like it's like people are always like, I'm a video game geek or I'm a this geek, and it's usually more of like a brag. Like I'm really good at X when you say that, a humble brag, if you will.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kevin G. Before we completely destroy you, we should say his very kind comment, which is that. In the men's, he's rooting for fellow old guy, Go Gamsky. He's 10 years younger than me.
Yay.
All right, well, yeah, of course, Gamsky has a lot of fans. I mean, his style of chess is just smooth and, is really understandable.
Yeah.
Like yesterday's game, you can really learn something from that.
Right, power chess, just driving right down the board, center control, kingside attack, winning material. Good technique.
Now, on the other hand, we've got a supporter for Varuzhin Akopian over in the championship, and GM Hikaru said that he wishes VAR lots of luck in the final games. And I'm not that surprised. VAR seems, I don't really hear a lot of people say a bad word about VAR. He seems like he's got a lot of friends, and people love to work with him.
So easy
he's a great team member.
Absolutely, so easygoing. really a friendly person and a voice of reason too. And when things get hectic at team championships, he's one of the guys that really you want on your team. Very calm and just a all-around great guy. Interestingly enough, in the game between Onishuk and Lenderman, by the way, I just pulled that up on my screen a few minutes ago. Maurice was showing us a computer-generated variation by Houdini, and that very variation that Maurice was anticipating is on the board. And the variation that Maurice had showed was this wild situation that might occur after the moves b5, a3, attacking the knight. Black ignores the threat to his knight, defends the knight, and after captures, we were looking at these crazed positions where two connected passed pawns on c4 and b4.
But a full exchange sacrifice.
A full exchange sacrifice. But these two connected passed pawns supported by a bishop, you had heard me talking about the queenside majority in this game versus white central majority. Well, that came to pass in this particular game. I would be very hesitant about saying who I would prefer. I like the exchange, I like the material, but any misstep here by Onishuk could cause him real trouble. Friendly smile there by Lenderman. He seems to...
Now, in this position, do we have some ways to eject that bishop from d5? And obviously, that would be a major gain for us. Like suppose we play rook to a5 here.
Well, sure. Rook a5 is a natural move, attacking the bishop for sure.
And we might want to play rook b5 in some situations as well.
Right, to get the rook behind the pawn.
And get our own pawn going, our own passed pawn.
Well, one of the things you have to consider is that have you pushed the bishop from a good active square to even a better one? Once
and
the
now
bishop...
rook to e5 doesn't quite work, does it, for tactical reasons?
Right. Well, once you push the bishop to the e4 square, Jen, the b1 square will be covered so that when these pawns do advance, the bishop will be supporting the pawn promotion. So the rook e5 move, well, there is queen takes e5
exactly, and
to
queen
begin.
takes e5 just wins the exchange back.
But one thing you have to consider is these pawns are so advanced that even you may not be that excited about having forced the trade of queens, because those pawns are scary. They're coming really fast down the board. So again, white has to play very, very precise. It might be that he's simply winning. He's an exchange up and there's no play with the pawns, but equally so, a misplayed move, a single misplayed move by white could easily cost Onishuk the game.
Yeah, and I think that he would probably hunker down at that moment and try to find the best move. It does seem like there are quite a number of options for white, right? It's not a position where you see like one or two candidate moves that pop out at you. It seems like there's just a lot of moves.
Yeah, and again, whatever decisions you make about those candidate moves, carefully judging and weighing which one's the best, whatever it is, I think it really needs accurate play because
before those pawns get completely monstrous.
Start rocking and rolling right down the queen side.
Now, both of these players, the time situation is rather balanced, but in another one of our exciting games of the round, to the contrary, Gareev Ramirez, Ramirez has eaten up a lot more time, and wow, boy, he's just moved his king to e8, and Maurice has more of that for us here at the championships.
Whoa.
Well, Jane, you know, I was most fascinated by this position when I saw it. It looks like some kind of fairy chess or anti-chess or what. Just a crazy position on the chessboard. And it's the kind of thing where it's so razor's edge, you make one false move, it could be boom, and you're gone. Well, let's look at the game, the way the game proceeded. And there's some lines that are just insane to look at. First of all, he took on the g8 square, and after rook takes, that is white did, the move f5 landed on the board. This had to scare Ramirez to look at it, and that's why he's eating up so much time on his clock. Of course, if you're the computer, you're like, no big deal, I'm up 2 pawns. I'm winning, and that's all it says. It's just winning. But to win. That's something totally different, to find the moves. First, let's look at this move, G5, which is just horrible, trying to keep the position closed. Why? Because of this move, queen to H5, and the black king feels very drafty right now. You obviously cannot take this piece because this move will drop, boom, bishop H6 check, and after the only move, rook G7, queen G4, and that's all she wrote on that rook, and your attack is breaking through. So the move F5, G5, queen H5, if you try to keep a balance with the move rook G7, time to sacrifice, blow open the position. You cannot accept this piece in this position because F6 is just too evil to look at. I mean, the black king is simply gone. And if you had captured back with the rook, pretty much the exact same thing is going to happen. The move knight takes, G5, pawn takes, and white could even play this move, queen takes on H7 with check. Now knight G6 is coming in. So if pawn takes here, then simply F6. And if you capture, then you're getting scrunched from every direction here. King F7, of course, doesn't work because there goes your queen. So white is like rubbing his hands together in this line. However, there was another line black could have played after the move F5. He could have played the move king to G7 and said, show me, what do you have? The queen landing on G4 doesn't mean anything because this bishop is pinning this pawn to this queen. So there's no real movement on that side. So the computer is saying that's nothing to worry about. And after king G7, if you try to get your queen to this side with takes, and queen to F3, trying just to get over here, well, black has shots on the other side himself with this move, knight to B3. Now this line could get crazy as well after queen to G3. Take a look at this line, threatening on G6, king H7, white